And one. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Spirit Matters, your daily Bhakti Center podcast, where we are going through the ancient text, yogic text, Bhagavad Gita, that has so many amazing spiritual truths in it. And we are learning how to apply these spiritual truths to our everyday lived contemporary lives in 2022. I am here with a live studio audience, as well as my dear friend and co-host, Achyuta Gopi. How are you doing this morning, Achyuta?
Ooh, I feel really good and sheltered. Like really, really good.
I need that. I need it. Give me some of your feeling sheltered energy.
I'm sending it. I'm sending it.
Thank you.
Sending it.
Um, I am feeling that Krishna wants me to be happy. That's where we left off yesterday, that Krishna wants me to be happy, even when things seem bleak.
Mm.
Or when you wake up on the wrong side of the bed, or when you've done something that's quote unquote out of character or messy or like whatever you want to call it. We ended with these two verses yesterday because we were speaking about just that. And Achyuta said that she had a story about them, but just to remind everyone of the verses, I'll read them. So this is Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 11, Chapter 20, verses 27 to 28. And it says, having awakened faith in the narrations of my glories, being disgusted with all material activities, knowing that all sense gratification leads to misery, but still being unable to renounce all sense enjoyment, my devotee should remain happy and
Mm.
worship me with great faith and conviction. Even though they are sometimes engaged in sense enjoyment, my devotee knows that all sense gratification leads to a miserable result, and they sincerely repent such activities.
Yeah. And to that end, you were saying yesterday, Krishna is constantly like, are you gonna offer me the flower? Or are we gonna like be dramatic and bemoan the fact that none of our offerings are perfect? Or are we just gonna like, are we gonna finally offer the thing? Like, are we gonna just do it? And in that regard, there is a story told by Sachinandan Swami, who is a fantastic spiritual teacher. If you have not, please look him up. He's even on Instagram. There's a deepening bhakti page where he shares lots of insights. And then there's also his Sachinandan Swami official page where he also shares lots of insights. But please go find him because it's one of the nicest German people I've ever met whose father was in the Hitler army. Like, how crazy is that? That doesn't seem like that should go together, right? Did you know that? So yeah, his father served in the Hitler army, and then somehow or other he became a Hare Krishna. Also had like a teenage rock band for some time. It's like,
I didn't know that. I knew the
yeah,
first part, but I didn't know he had a teenage rock band.
yeah, he had a band for a while. So he tells a story about the great sage Narada Muni. And Narada um, desires to, he asks Krishna, what is your illusory potency like? Your Maya potency, what is it like? And Krishna says, well, are you sure you want to know? And Narada says, well, yeah, I mean, I asked this question, I have to know. What is it like? And Krishna says, well, okay, I'll tell you, but first, there's a neighboring village. Can you go to that village and just bring me some water? I really need some water. Narada Muni says, of course, my lord, no problem. He goes to the neighboring village. He knocks on a few doors. Finally, he comes to the door of a village chief. And the chief says, oh, Narada, so good to see you. We heard you were coming. It was foretold that you would be here. And we're so eager to serve you. Narada thinks this is wonderful. He comes in, takes a seat, gets served. He says, oh, also it was foretold that you would marry my daughter. Narada says, well, I am the kind of sage that doesn't normally get married. Like, that's not normally my thing. But, like, I don't know what to tell you in this instance. And like, well, this was the prophecy. How can we go against prophecy? And Narada thinks, well, okay, how can we go against prophecy? I guess I'll have to marry your daughter. So he marries the daughter, and they have some children. They're kind of going through life, and then one day there's a tumultuous storm coming. It's like flooding, like hurricanes and all kinds of things, such as the kind that happened when we were away. And so it was raining for days and days, and finally this deluge was coming, and it was kind of inundating this entire village. Everyone was kind of getting swept away. And Narada thinks about his entire life, and he thinks, oh, I was taking shelter of Krishna. I used to take shelter of Krishna. And as this huge wave of water comes, he thinks, oh, Krishna, save me. Oh, Krishna, save me. Oh, Krishna, save me. And finally, he finds himself back at the feet of Krishna. And he thinks, oh, my Lord, I'm back. I don't know what all that was, but that was incredible. I can only imagine that must have been what your Maya potency was like. I had no idea. I lost track of who I was, what I was, all the things. And my Lord, somehow I took shelter and I found my way back to your lotus feet. Krishna says, Narada, where's my water? And Narada realizes that all of that, all of that might be well and true. But really, this Maya potency is, are we going to make the offering or not? Will we remember Krishna's water? So when you were telling that yesterday, I was thinking, I was like, yeah, so many people before me, spiritually minded souls have asked themselves this question. Am I going to bemoan how imperfect I am and how much I've gotten caught up in all of the things? Or am I just going to bring Krishna his water that he asked for?
I really love this so much because it shows some humanity in the stories. You know, sometimes we're so used to hearing about like these like lofty, oh my God, I'm never gonna be there. And it's
Yeah,
like, wait a minute, Narada Muni is, you know,
right?
kind of in this same, going through the same thing that we went through. It's like that we're going through, constantly forgetting who we are. But I think that there's a big difference here. And I think that there's something to learn from here is that Narada, like, you know, he came back to Krishna's lotus feet and he was just like, oh my Lord, you know, like I'm here I am again. And I think that the acceptance of understanding that I am not God, I'm not the controller. It's not Krishna who has to give me the water. I'm supposed to offer Krishna the water. And to be very honest, I think that a lot of people have a lot of trouble with that. You know, they have a lot of trouble with that seemingly material subservience of like, why should I bow, or why should I do this, or why should I like this, you know? And because of that, because of this weird envy relationship that happens with God, essentially, you know, people try to control everything in their life,
Hmm.
amass everything possible, and really foolishly think that like, not think, but just get caught up in the dualities of life. It's like when things are going great, I'm happy. And when things are going bad, I'm sad, and I have to somehow get back to things going good as much as possible. And this next verse of Bhagavad Gita, which is kind of, it's kind of just like speaking about the similar verses right before it. It says, this is 250. It says, a man engaged in devotional service rids himself of both good and bad reactions, even in this life. Therefore, strive for yoga, which is the art of all work. And I really like this verse because it reminds us that, like, hey, all of the quote unquote good stuff that you're doing too, that you might think is good, you know, amassing a bunch of money and getting the girl, getting the guy, whatever it is that society has, that Maya has really tricked us into thinking this is good, this is success. It's like it also has its reactions. And Bhagavad Gita is constantly reminding us, Krishna is constantly reminding us, like, that's not the goal, actually. Like the goal isn't all this supposedly good stuff too. And so here, what's being told to us, and I really love in the purport, because Srila Prabhupada says, one's ignorance can be removed by the instruction of Bhagavad Gita,
Mm.
which teaches one to surrender unto Lord Sri Krishna in all respects. And I love this language, and become liberated from the chained victimization of action and reaction, birth after birth.
Yeah, that sounds like a Jai Jagannath line if I
Yeah.
ever heard one. Like that, it seems like that Srila Prabhupada wrote that just for him. There's just something about that line. And it's actually really beautifully done. Like so beautifully written, you know, and we often don't think about the chained victimization. I mean, now we society is starting to, but it's all about like, you know, how we're calling each other names and calling ourselves names and all whatever. It's like, oh, this victim mentality and all this stuff. But really, Srila Prabhupada, this is in the 70s and even before, was talking about the chained victimization because we can really start to feel that way. Like, what is going to make a difference? We were talking about that in India, and we were having, you know, just a group meeting about what we were all experiencing, and we're seeing poverty, and we're seeing like really destitute, downtrodden people. And sometimes the cure isn't to give them money. And so then you start thinking, but like, okay, like what is the cure? What is the real welfare work? And you were saying at one point you were a social worker, and I was saying it's such a tough job because you start to really see how it really is a tangled web of like bureaucracy and politics and red tape and this tape and all whatever. And you start feeling like what really is the welfare work then? What is the actual social work? And that actual social work is, like Srila Prabhupada said, it's like taking shelter of the instruction of Bhagavad Gita. It is exactly awakening faith in the narrations of the glories of Krishna. It is having faith that what Krishna says is true, will be true, and stands true even for us, not just Narada, not just Yashoda, his mother, not just all of these people from eons ago. What Krishna says, we can have truth, stands true, have faith that it stands true for us in our lives, right here, right now, 2022, and moving forward. It is non different. Those instructions absolutely will give us the goal of perfection.
Yeah, and I think that you or a person really needs to like feel that, embody that, become surrendered to that. It's not like me over here, Kishore, can like shake you into like believing that. It's like believe Bhagavad Gita, it's like because the mind is so strong, and it's like you want to look for solutions. You want to look for answers. When you see poverty in the world, when you see all these problems, when you see all these injustices, especially it's becoming very in vogue now, but always like there's always been this like mood of like, I have to fix things, I have to fix the world, I have to fix society. And I'm not saying that like, social justice is bad and there shouldn't be, social movements. Of course, like that's a whole nother topic. But I think that when we get so caught up in trying to fix kind of this material world where we're at right now, and everything is external, we're not really paying attention to what's going on inside, what's internal. Because it's been proven time and time again in so many different aspects. You can get the job, you can get the money, you can get the person, you can get all the things that you're supposed to get in this life that equals success, right? And people are still unhappy, people are still depressed, people are still searching for something deeper. So that's where Bhagavad Gita comes in. As is said by Jai Jagannath, has a really funny story about this, but I won't get into it so much. But the highest welfare work, and Srila Prabhupada also uses this language, the highest welfare work of really understanding the nature of the soul. And again, like I was mentioning before, like coming back to that eternal identity of like, I am surrendered and a servant of God, of divinity, of Krishna. And I guess what I'm saying is that like, whatever karmic, that word was big on also while we were in India. I remember one of our participants was talking a lot about karma. And in these passages in Bhagavad Gita, that's exactly what Krishna is talking about. He's saying that like, wait a minute, if you do this, and he's going to get into it more in the third chapter, like a lot more specifically, but here he's already telling us like, this devotional service rids you of both the good karma, good in quotation marks, because he'll talk about that more too, and the bad karma. So do the devotional service. And of course Arjuna needs a little bit more coaxing and talking and etc. But just to move on a little bit, because I think these next couple of verses are really nice. They're really, we could go into them more tomorrow, but I really like them, so I'm going to read them.
Mm-hmm.
In verse 51, Krishna says, by thus engaging in devotional service to the Lord, great sages or devotees free themselves from the results of work in the material world. In this way, they become free from the cycle of birth and death and attain the state beyond all miseries. In
Mm.
parentheses, by going back to Godhead. And then I'll read this verse. When your intelligence has passed out of the dense forest of delusion, you shall become indifferent to all that has been heard and all that is to be heard. And
Mm.
one more verse. When your mind is no longer disturbed by the flowery language of the Vedas, and when it remains fixed in the trance of self-realization, then you will have attained the divine consciousness, it says.
Mm-hmm.
Whoa.
Yeah, I was reading in Sri Brihad Bhagavatamrita yesterday, and they were saying that a person who chants the name of their beloved Lord, having fixed themselves in the vow of being the servant of the Lord, attains perfection easily. And I was thinking, I was like, above and beyond any vows that we take, one vow is simple and for certain, and that vow is just that we are servants of the Supreme Person. Srila Prabhupada goes on later to state within Bhagavad Gita that those who have not taken up that vow, those who even think, oh, I can become one with, they become insecure in their devotional service, because the soul's intrinsic nature is to do some service, to offer something, to give back. And so they become insecure in that devotional service. And in searching for something to serve, those souls come back to the material world and become philanthropists. And so there will always be philanthropic people. But it's like, it's like, why would I want to become disentangled from the good karma, bad karma, etc.? Like, what's the big deal? Why is Krishna making a big deal about this? And I had a conversation with a friend once, and they were saying, oh, well, I'm a vegan, and so I'm not using any animal products. And I said, unfortunately, it's kind of impossible for me as a devotee. And they were like, well, you should change your devotional lifestyle then, because you shouldn't cause harm to anyone. I said, well, my problem is this. I wouldn't even be able to be a pujari or a priestess if I lived by that. There's a conch shell, which used to be the home of some previous living entity. I couldn't use that. There's a peacock fan that I would use to fan my Krishna. I wouldn't be able to do that. There is cow dung used in incense. There are flowers. There's a chamara, which is taken from well, usually after the animal has died of natural causes, a yak tail fan. Like, I wouldn't be able to do any of the arti ceremony if I were really, really staunchly abiding by this principle. I was like, and that's not even going into what I'm ingesting or putting into my body. It's just about using certain things. And so he's like, well, I'm not even going to use a cell phone because it's going to disrupt the pattern at bees, et cetera, et cetera. And I was like, well, do you have a car? He said, well, yeah, but I don't have the one with the leather seats. And I was like, you don't think that company that you just gave the thousands of dollars to is not also manufacturing the ones with the leather seats? Even if you don't buy it, you've still bought into this parent company. And so we had a long conversation. At the end, he was just kind of like, well, what am I supposed to do then? There's no winning. I was like, exactly. There is no winning. Because the material world is set up like a prison for wayward lost souls. The goal is to find our way back and give Krishna his water. That is actually the goal, is to remember, oh wait, I, right. Instead of playing into the game of all of this, I was supposed to be a servant of Krishna. Fixed in my vow that my identity is not black, white, man, woman, whatever it is, householder, sannyasi, renunciate, whatever, millionaire, poor person. My vow, my absolute identity is that I'm a servant of the servant of those people who serve my Lord. My vow, my actual identity is to be water bearer number whatever and just give Krishna his water over and above all of this. And so when he says, when you've come out of the dense forest of delusion, why? Because we're sitting here trying to find fixes to a prison system which is made for soul rehabilitation. And we're supposed to get tired of this place. It's like, well, why am I here? If like, you're supposed to get tired of it. You are supposed to become heartsick of this place so that you will want to remember that our real identities were ever joyfully serving our dearmost friend.
Ah, that was so nice. I was just really enjoying listening to you because I was just like, yeah. And I think that, and again, I'll go back to saying, like, I think that people really need to realize that in a from a very deep and personal place, like you can hear it as you all are hearing it now, you can hear it, but like that internal in your heart feeling of like, I am a servant of Krishna, I am a servant of God. I'm not whatever happens, what if I make millions of dollars, if I make no dollars, if my body works, if it doesn't work, if this, if that, like whatever it might be, it's like no matter what happens, can I remember this, because it's really easy to get caught up in, you know, um, economic development and all of this stuff. And Krishna is speaking about this in these verses, right? Because I just wanted to, these verses that we read, when Krishna says you'll become indifferent to everything that has been heard and everything that will be heard. What he's speaking about, if you go into the purports in this verse 52 and 53, he's speaking about the Vedas, and there's a large part of the Vedas that deal with kind of like these what's it called, artha, dharma, kama, and moksha, like getting the things that make life pleasurable, so money and religion and things that you desire, and yeah, and liberation and all of this stuff. And there's a large portion of the Vedas, maybe people don't know this, so I wanted to clarify that, like literally deal with rituals to get those things. It's like, okay, do this, you pray to this deity, you do the thing, you chant these mantras, and now you're going to get the thing. And so Srila Prabhupada here in the purport is saying that, of verse 52, he's saying that these Vedic rites and rituals are imperative for neophytes, comprehending all kinds of prayer 3 times a day, taking bath early, offering respects to forefathers, etc. But when one is fully in Krishna consciousness and is engaged in his transcendental loving service, one becomes indifferent to all these regulative principles because he has already attained perfection. And so I think that it's a little twofold here, because one, there's the part of the Vedas that deal with kind of this, what's the karma kanda, that's what it's called. The karma kanda aspect of the Vedas that deal with more of these kind of materialistic things. But what Srila Prabhupada is telling us here is like, there is some importance to some regulations when we're in a neophyte stage. So it's not like throw the baby out with the bathwater. All of a sudden I just click the switch and I'm Krishna conscious and I'm just like living in my eternal swaroop of just like a manjari at the, feet of the gopis, Ras Leela, whatever. It's like, no, I'm not there. So yeah, I need to chant my rounds and I need to study systematically and I need to, bathe and like whatever, right? But I also think that it's such a revolutionary, beautiful way of thinking that Krishna is telling Arjuna, like, this bhakti has so much potential and it's so powerful. And this devotion to me and this remembrance of me is so powerful that it even supersedes that. It even supersedes these rules and regulations when you're ready, like when you're ready, but it does, and it will, and it can. And I think that's so nice and powerful.
Yeah, it's extremely powerful. And it's just like being in school, you learn certain things in school and then you realize, okay, now remember those foundations? You don't need to go back to them every single time. You can put those down. You've gained maturity in your education. And so this is how spiritual education goes. At a certain point, you've gained maturity in your spiritual education. But there are some things that don't ever go by the wayside. Sometimes the ritual goes by the wayside, but then never somehow the chanting and the remembrance of Krishna. Because somehow or other, that chanting begins to open up an entire world before us that we could not have seen before. And so I think that it's phenomenal that at the very beginning, we're given the perfection and the goal and the means and the everything. We are given this chanting of God's most intimate names at the very beginning. And that is the goal. And we then, Baldevi was saying that, a prison made of thought, our minds start to put so many obstacles in front of us about why we can't, why we shouldn't, when's the right time, now's not the right time, nothing, all whatever, And I was listening to Sachinandan Maharaj speak to some people once, and he was instructing them about chanting. And they said, "Oh, Maharaj, when is the right time? We should get up early in the morning, right? We should be doing this then, right? We should only be doing this then." And he said, "Morning is there." He said, "But do the best you can at any time. Do the best you can to chant at any time." And we were talking about how we get caught up in, I will get the girl, I will get the car, I'll get the money, I'll get the job, I'll get all this stuff. And what we lack, and the thing that will take us to perfection, is that simplicity of heart. And we spoke about this on the India trip. And I was telling my sister, I was like, never be ashamed to say, I think I need more time. I think I need more. I think I need more evidence, more. I'm greedy for more. I want to know more. Never be ashamed to say, I don't think I've got this lesson. Everybody else is saying, yep, woo, got it, no problem. We're moving on to the next grade. Don't be ashamed to be that person that says, I think I need more. Why is Krishna constantly asking Arjuna, are your doubts clarified? Have you understood everything? Because Krishna is searching for that simplicity of heart. That simplicity for the person who says, I haven't gotten it. I'm still having a hard time. Krishna, I think I need more instruction. I need you to tell me more. That is actually more perfect than the person who pretends. That person who pretends will never reach perfection. But for the simple-hearted person, this process becomes easy.
I really love that you brought that up, and I know we're running fresh out of time, but I love Baldevi's comment about a prison made of thought, and you cannot escape with thought. You can only escape with acceptance and love for Krishna, who will lead us to freedom. And I feel like that's exactly what you're talking about at Achyuta Gopi, that simplicity of heart. I finished reading this book called Jaiva Dharma, and the last part of it is like really complex. It's like really intense. It's like really, and there's so many parts in the narrative, because it's a narrative between, it's dialogue between two people always. is one person's like trying to understand logically with his mind, like, okay, but what about this and this and blah, 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 blah. And the person always says, like, you're never going to understand this with your mind. You're never going to understand this with your mind. And I can't explain it to you with words, and you will only understand
Yeah.
it through your heart and through, chanting the names and, and that's it. Like you're going to reach a level of realization where you're going to realize, I remember they were saying specifically this, I'm paraphrasing. You're going to reach a level of realization where you're going to realize that you've realized something, but you can't even share that because you can't put it into words. And it's just like, that's beautiful and that's fascinating to me, because it's like we're always looking for these thought, thought solutions and word answers of like, okay, this phrase or this thing or this thought, it's finally going to free me from whatever. And it's like, nah, it's like my personal realization, or everyone's personal realization, is just that. It's a personal realization that
Yeah.
you're going through with Krishna.
Mhm.
And that's your journey, and of course we can talk about it, and we're here and we're discussing Bhagavad Gita and etc. But I love that simplicity of heart, because the simple heart is not like looking for like, okay, like the math lady meme where it's like, okay, if I
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
it's like we're not, that simple heart is not doing that. That simple heart is just surrendering. It's just accepting. It's just experiencing. It's realizing. Okay, we are running fresh out of time. Um, Lots going on in the chat. Irenka, yes, thank you. And Baldevi says, I have that happen all the time and can only
yeah.
smile or shrug and be silent. Yeah, it's like, okay. And I think it's so everyone can reach the wordless knowing in their own time. That's such a beautiful way of putting it, because that's exactly what I was trying to say. It's like you can't shake people into realization. They need to reach the wordless knowing in their own time. It's so gorgeous. Okay, Kimberly, what do you got for us? What is your takeaway for us today?
Thank you. So many good gems today. So, the highest welfare work is understanding the nature of the soul. We are here for soul rehabilitation.
Mm.
And instead of getting lost in the prison of the material world, we can take shelter of Krishna's instruction, simplify our hearts, and find our way back to offer Krishna his water.
Beautiful. Thank you, Kimberly. Achuta, what are you taking away with you today?
Yeah. This one was such a good one and so beautiful. Like it was like a good day to just hear from your friends. So I already came into it with this idea of like, nah, today's a good day. That's it. And I feel like Krishna did not disappoint. He doesn't. So with all of that, I think I am taking away that I've always wanted to reach that point, like you were saying, that wordless knowing, and Baldevi was saying, it's reaching the reason why so many of the spiritual teachers that I look up to, sometimes they'll just say, Krishna, Krishna. And I've always been like, I want to know what it is that's behind there that makes the person simply close their eyes and like they're tasting everything. Krishna, Krishna. And Sachinandan Maharaj does that a lot. If you've been around him at all, he'll take moments and it's almost really like he's tasting something. So that the end of Jaiva Dharma, where they're saying, you'll have realizations that they go beyond conception, because Nandi and I were talking about it, and she's like, Mom, just when I start to understand something about Krishna, I was like, then he confuses you because Krishna is inconceivable. And so that is the definition of inconceivable. Just as you start to have a conception, you start to conceive of something, Krishna does something else and it's completely inconceivable. And she's like, I'm starting to understand that. And so if an 11-year-old can simply just start to understand that, I want to really get behind this inconceivable Krishna where all you can do is somehow feel it.
Yeah. I'm also right there with Nandi. Because I'm really feeling like Krishna's inconceivable, and because he's inconceivable, and this is what I'm taking away, because Krishna is inconceivable, I have to be open to the mystery, and I have to be open to the surprises, and things are not going to go my way, and that simultaneously can be scary, but I'm trying to take away of like, it's surprising, it's exciting, Krishna's a mischievous, exciting, surprising, inconceivable God, and I just have to be
Adventure.
open to the ride, you know.
And one last thing I
Yeah.
will say, um, it's been my prayer since I came back from India that we'll get sick of this material world. And I keep praying, like literally every day, even this morning, I prayed, I was like, don't allow me to get hard-hearted from feeling so frustrated with this place.
Thank you for that. I think that's something I need to take away with me too, because I'm the type of person, I'm like a Scorpio, and we're slowly going into Scorpio season in the fall. And I feel myself like wearing darker colors, all black, just like walking around like, you know. So I'm like, yeah, I need to not get hard-hearted and just remember the beauty and the mystery and the simplicity of Krishna's love. So thank you for that, because the material world can be frustrating. You know, it is a frustrating place, and it can be a place where we do get hard-hearted and bitter and angry and frustrated. So thank you, Achyuta, for being here, and thank you everyone for being here, so that we can mutually remind each other and pray for each other to not get hard-hearted in this frustrating material world. Okay, folks, thank you all so much for your presence, for your participation, to our live studio audience in the chat, for everyone out there in the world listening. Thank you all so much, and we will see you tomorrow. Bye, everyone.